The movie starts in Summerville, Oklahoma, where we see Egon Spengler being chased by an unseen spectral entity. He makes it back to his house and attempts to lure it into a trap, but the trap fails. Egon runs back into the house and prepares himself, but the ghost gets Egon in his chair and kills him. When there's something strange in your neighborhood, who you gonna call? We jump to Egon's estranged daughter, Callie, who lives with her kids Trevor and Phoebe, the latter sharing Egon's keen interest in science. They are being evicted from their home due to lack of payments, but Callie learns that Egon left her family the house in Summerville, so she packs up her things with the kids and heads there. The family makes it to Egon's house, which everyone in town just knew as the home of the dirt farmer since he was such a recluse. The house is a dump, but having been evicted earlier they have no other option but to stay. They are met by Janine Melnitz, who informs Callie that Egon left them saddled with a lot of debt. Callie later takes the kids to get dinner at a burger shop. Trevor is instantly smitten with an older girl named Lucky who works there. He applies for a job to try and talk with her, but he ends up being teased by the other workers instead.
What's up, Casanova?
When they return home, as Phoebe is reading a book, the chessboard suddenly falls on the ground and scatters all the pieces. She picks them up before going to bed. Meanwhile, Trevor walks around outside and goes to the barn where he discovers the Ecto-1. In the morning, Phoebe finds that one of the chess pieces moved on the chessboard, so she moves one of her own pieces. Callie drives Trevor to start work at the burger place while Phoebe starts summer school. She meets her teacher, Mr. Gruberson, and her classmate Podcast, who has his own podcast for the supernatural. Mr. Gruberson puts on Cujo for the class instead of teaching, and an earthquake happens. Phoebe goes to Gruberson's office, where she learns that he is a seismologist and has been monitoring an unusual seismic activity coming from somewhere in town over the last few years. Phoebe and Podcast later walk towards the mines, where they find carvings of an ancient monster who one day appeared on there out of nowhere. Back home, Trevor starts to fix up the Ecto-1's engine. Later at night, Phoebe sees that the chess pieces moved again, and when she makes a move, the ghost in the room knocks her piece off the board. She sees Egon's PKE meter light up. She goes downstairs, and with the help of the supernatural entity, ends up finding an old ghost trap. Back at school, Phoebe brings the ghost trap and shows Podcast, but Gruberson sees it and becomes curious. He brings up the old ghost sightings and shows Phoebe and Podcast a video of the original Ghostbusters after they saved Manhattan from destruction in the 80s, and Phoebe learns that her grandfather was a Ghostbuster. Gruberson takes them outside the school to see how the trap works, but they accidentally unleash a monstrous ghost that flies toward the Chandra mine.
We should probably get out of here.
You're an adult.
Yeah, and liable.
Gruberson takes Phoebe and Podcast back home, where we see some chemistry between Callie and Gruberson.
Hi.
Hello again.
You brought them home.
It's a service I provide.
Are
Well, I'm also an escort. That came out wrong.
Yeah.
The kids go through more of Egon's stuff, finding a book about Gozer the Gazarian, the same evil ancient entity that terrorized Manhattan all those years ago, as well as the knowledge of Gozer being freed by the gatekeeper and keymaster. Meanwhile, Lucky invites Trevor to go out with her friends to hang out at the mines, where they find one of the ghostly entities bursts out and flies away. Phoebe takes the PKE meter and goes to the barn where she comes across Egon's old workspace and computer room. She finds his old uniform with his name on it, and soon realizes that the ghost that's been following her is Egon. She fixes up one of his devices before returning to her room. When Phoebe later asks Callie what kind of scientist Egon was, she brushes him off with resentment for abandoning her and her mother. In the morning, Phoebe brings Egon's old proton pack to show Podcast as they test out the beam, which turns out to still be powerful. They then hear a noise coming from inside a building, and they find a blue blobby ghost that they name Muncher because it eats metal. The ghost spots Phoebe and Podcast and attacks by roaring out metal shards at them. They fire the proton beam at Muncher and attempt to use the ghost trap, but he manages to escape and fly away. They chase after the ghost, just as Trevor fixes up the Ecto-1 and takes it out for a spin. He picks up Phoebe and Podcast as they chase after Muncher, with Phoebe sitting in the car's retractable seat and continuing to fire the proton beam at Muncher. Meanwhile, Callie is on a date with Gruberson, expressing her worries about Phoebe not fitting in. The kids drive through town chasing Muncher and firing the beam, which Callie and Gruberson notice. The three chase Muncher outside of town going toward the mine, using a remote-controlled trap to catch the ghost. As they are driving back, they are caught and arrested by Sheriff Domingo. In the jail cell, the three find that Lucky is Domingo's daughter, but she backs up Trevor's account of the ghost they saw as he tells Phoebe and Podcast. Phoebe uses her one phone call to contact Ray Stans, who runs an occult antique shop out of the former Ghostbusters headquarters. When Phoebe mentions Egon, Ray says he can rot in hell until Phoebe mentions he is dead, at which point he feels remorse. Ray explains to Phoebe that Egon had a major falling out with him and the other Ghostbusters before he retreated to Somerville with every single bit of their old equipment. The last time Ray spoke to Egon, he mentioned some crazy talk about the apocalypse. Phoebe manages to tell Ray she is Egon's granddaughter before Domingo makes her hang up. Callie and Gruberson come to bail the kids out, but Domingo keeps all the Ghostbusters equipment in storage. When they get home, Phoebe and Callie argue, as Phoebe has come to understand and respect what Egon did, but Callie still sees him as a bad father and doesn't want her daughter mixed up in his business. Back at the mine, something awakens. Gruberson goes to Walmart for ice cream but then notices little bags of Stay Puft marshmallows coming to life. More marshmallow men start popping out of the bags and take over the store. Gruberson gets spooked and starts leaving until he finds Vince Clortho, the keymaster, in the aisle. He runs for his life, but the beast chases Gruberson all the way to his car and attacks him. The next day, Phoebe and Podcast bring Trevor and Lucky to the mine to do more investigating. They find a temple with a statue of Gozer.
Is that her? Is that Gozer?
Gozer isn't he or she.
Pretty woke for 3000 BC.
They also find the preserved body of Ivo Shandor, a cult leader devoted to Gozer. There are years marked on the walls from various seismic events over the decades, and it looks as though Shandor was preparing to reawaken in the current year for Gozer's return. Another earthquake happens, but the kids discover the source, a ghostly portal underneath a trap Egon built to keep Gozer and other evil ghosts at bay. The trap activates and keeps Gozer from emerging. Meanwhile, Callie finds the PKE meter and comes across Egon's lab and eventually realizes his ghost is there too. He has been keeping up with her growing up, with pictures and news articles of her all over his wall, meaning he really did love her. Unfortunately, she is found and attacked by Zuul, the gatekeeper. The kids return home to find Callie possessed by Zuul. She becomes feral and escapes through the window, while Gruberson, now possessed by Vince Clortho, disables Egon's trap, leading to many evil ghosts to be set free into Somerville. The kids go to Egon's lab and get his equipment and uniforms to try and stop Gozer themselves. As the town falls into widespread panic, the kids go to the station where they free Muncher so he can eat through the metal bars and get the confiscated equipment. While this goes on, Zuul and Vince Clortho meet and things get kinky and weird. The new Ghostbusters drive toward the site of the chaos, as Zuul and Vince Clortho bring forth the old temple and revive Gozer's human form. Shandor awakens and tries to appease the evil ghost, but Gozer is not interested and tears Shandor in half. The four arrive to fight back, with Podcast managing to weaken Gozer and break Callie free from her possession by trapping Zuul. Gozer is temporarily weakened, but manages to pursue and destroy the ghost trap which frees Zuul who possess Lucky, allowing Gozer to regain full power. It tries to kill Callie and the other kids, until someone calls out,
Hey, Flat Top!
We see the original Ghostbusters, Ray, Peter Venkman, and Winston Zedmore, arriving to help out. They cross the streams to get Gozer, but the evil ghost overpowers them and breaks through. Phoebe attempts to get Gozer on her own, at which point Egon's ghost materializes and helps her hold it right. He stands alongside his former friends and partners, and together with Trevor and Podcast, they manage to activate the trap to consume Gozer, Zuul, and Vince Clortho. Trevor helps break Lucky out of the shell that was once Zuul, along with Gruberson coming out of the Vince Clortho shell. The old Ghostbusters talk to the new ones, and Venkman acknowledges that Phoebe really is Egon's granddaughter. Egon's ghost looks at his friends, as they reconcile for their earlier feud, and Callie is able to finally hug her father before he crosses over. The old Ghostbusters return to New York City in the Ecto-1, and we see the words for Harold. In the mid-credits scene we see Venkman married to Dana Barrett, who is doing his old electroshock test on him. Post-credits scene, a flashback is shown of Egon giving Janine a coin. In the present day, she shows the coin to Winston, who is making arrangements to have the old headquarters in Ecto-1 restored. Meanwhile, one of the ghost containment units starts to glow red. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thanks and see you again soon.